Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us today for episode 21 of the LoveWorks. I'm glad you're able to join. Please, you're welcome. Kindly click on the share button and share the link. We thank you for joining us today. We are grateful to God for the opportunity to be part of this. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I hope that you are as excited as I am for today's session. This is the first Monday 7th, in the month of September, the 9th month of 2020. And today we start a new theme, an interesting theme. And I hope that we all can benefit immensely from it. So I'm glad you're able to join. So please, just take a moment and click on the share button and share the link with other people. I'll be joining me shortly will be my wife, Pastor Ngozi, and then our special guest will also be joining as we'll start a brand new topic today. We look forward to it, and I hope that each of us can get the very best out of it. So I'm happy to welcome you. Click on the share button, share the link with other people. We throughout the month of August, we focus on preparing to marry. And today, or this month of September will be a brand new topic, and we'll be introducing that in a moment. But I just want you to take a few minutes, invite your friends, invite people in your network. I will be joining me today will be my wife, Pastor Ngozi and Nelama, and also our very special guest, Pastor Onari Duke, who was with us last week as we spoke on preparing to marry. But this week we are adjusting ourselves and shifting gear to a new topic titled Foundations. Foundations. What does it mean to build the foundation for a marriage that will go the distance? So we're going to be looking at the subject of foundations for a successful marriage. So once again, I welcome you. Thank you very much. And I hope that you get the benefit out of this class today indeed. I'll be praying a moment. Our time is fast spent, is running, but it's okay. Father, we thank you for the moment. We thank you for the opportunity to delve into the ministry of your word and to share on the principles of enduring marriages. We pray that even as we proceed, that you proceed with us. Help us, oh God, thy kingdom come, that will be done in every area of our lives. Thank you, Father, because we know you have heard. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Once again, I welcome you. Thank you for joining. Thank you indeed for joining, and thank you for being a part of this episode 21. Episode 21, indeed, that's a lot to celebrate. In the month of August, like I said, we focus heavily on preparing to marry, and we covered a number of subjects. We had two guests. We had Data, who spoke to us, and then we had Miss Onari Duke, who was with us last week. Data was with us for 3 weeks back to back. The first week had some glitches here and there, and then we had almost like something that was close to a repeat broadcast, and then we built on that. And then in the last Monday of the month of August, we invited Pastor Onari Duke. And so today she'll be joining us again, as well as my wife. And I hope that you will get the best out of it, as I already said. But let's get a quick summary about preparing to marry. What did we focus on in the month of August? We're talking about what should people that are single do when they're preparing to marry that will enhance their marriage experience ultimately when they get married. Because most times people put their lives on pause, and as if they will be able to recover the lost seasons or the lost moments of life, okay? So it's a bit of a challenge when we pause our lives, either because we're trying to get married or because we're waiting for a project and life passes us by. Because when that happens, that part of our life that is lost is not always easy to recover. So we had guests who shared some of their personal experiences with us, and then we also focused on some of the important principles of God's word. The principle of trusting God, the principle of waiting on God, the principle of serving God, giving your time to service, and of course the principles of personal growth and self-development, the principles of faith in God, of believing in the eternal purpose of God for your life. As we have always said, this is LoveWorks. LoveWorks is a preparatory program for singles and for those in the early years, the first few years of marriage, those who maybe in the first 5 years of marriage, those who are older, we work with them in a program called Marriage Works. LoveWorks means that love works. We believe very strongly that love works in marriage, love works in life, and that as we practice the art of love, loving our neighbors, loving our spouses, that we're going to get the benefits of every form and every kind of relationship we're involved in. Today, we are looking at the subject of foundation, or foundations, and this is quite an interesting subject for me, for many regards, because like I've already mentioned, in LoveWorks, we do a lot of things. We work with couples, and work with individuals, and the objective is to lay the right foundation for a marriage that goes the distance, or to lay the foundation for an enduring marriage. So foundation is an important part of LoveWorks. And we want to ask ourselves, what do we mean when we say foundation? What precisely do we mean by foundation? And so we'll try and unpack that today, look at that, interrogate that, investigate that, and look at it from several angles. And then with our special guest, we like her to share her own experience about what has formed the foundation of her marriage and what she believes about foundations of marriages and what she's passing on to other people. Okay, so thank you once again for joining. I will like to make sure that that the other people have access by the grace of God. So let me take a look at the meaning of foundations. Foundations. Let me look at my notes here. Foundations. What are foundations? Foundations. Okay. Thank you very much. You that you're listening out there, what when you say foundation, what comes to you? What do you consider to be foundations? What is it? What do you know about foundations? Every building has foundations. So what do you think about foundations, and what's your own view of foundation, and what's your own definition of foundation? How would you define foundation yourself? Okay. Yes, it's interesting. Okay. So foundations has to do with the what you might call the substructure of a building, that part of the building that is invisible to the natural eyes, on which the superstructure or the solid structure is laid. Usually it's a stone or it's a kind of foundation. There are different types of foundation that exist in life. Those who are involved in building, every house you have has a foundation, okay? And the type of foundation is usually a function of the type of house, how high the house will rise, okay? And then the nature of the soil on which the building is going to be erected, or the edifice is going to be erected. You know, so for places that are swampy, marshy, waterlogged, you know, you have to, and when you want to erect very tall buildings, you have to use the kind of foundation that has to find the rock surface. Sometimes they use what they call piles, of, you know, pile foundation. And then, you know, it will vary from place to place. The size of the structure, like we said, influences or affects the foundation. You know, so what this implies is that the kind of foundation we lay, once we understand what that means, will also be a function of how far we really want to go. It has many, many implications, but before we even go to those implications, let's even keep clarifying the point of foundation. Foundation, it's below the ground surface, is usually not visible to the natural eyes, and yet it's an important part of the building structure. It's that part of a structure that it's done, and most people don't even know it exists. Most of the buildings around the world, when you look at them, you almost have to be an expert to think about the nature of the foundation. But you have to be aware that there can be no erection of a building, there can be no edifice, there can be no real building without foundation, because that building has to rest on something. Foundations are also load-bearing. Foundations are those structures, even though they are under the ground, substructure that transfer the load from the main building or the main edifice and the main structure to the ground or to the rock surface in some cases, you know, where you have to build on the rock. Okay, even bridges around the world, the best of bridges, whether it's London Bridge, whether it's Echo Bridge, whether it's, you know, the bridge in Los Angeles, or rather in San Francisco, you know, or the bridge anywhere, whether it's George Washington Bridge in New York, New Jersey area, any bridge or some of the best bridges around the world, it can't build bridges without foundations, especially mostly because bridges are built over and across water. So you still have to transfer the load from the bridge to the water, because even the cars and the vehicular movement or the vehicles that are carried on those bridges, they have load. You have to think about the load capacity and transfer the load from the bridge to the rock surface. The water itself doesn't carry the load. So those are all important points. So foundations are below, they are below ground level. Foundations are called substructures. Foundations are not visible to the natural eyes. Foundations are also called the basis or the principles on which something is built, okay, like because it's a noun. So the basis of a structure or the principles on which something is built. So if you think about a marriage, it means the basis of a marriage. It also means the principles that undergirds a marriage. Every marriage, by default or design, has foundations. Every marriage, all marriages have foundations. And one of the reasons why marriages pack up is because of weak foundations. One of the reasons why buildings sometimes collapse or have default lines on those buildings is because of faulty foundations. So, and the Bible does say that if the foundation be destroyed, what shall the righteous do? So foundations are extremely important, and they are not things that we can easily take for granted. Okay, so let me take a look again at some of the notes that we have here. Let's take a look again at our notes. We have some very important points here. Let me see. Okay, let me look at this. Okay, so the basis, another definition of foundation, which is from a Latin origin. The original word foundation is almost like a transliterated word in Latin. That's almost like foundation. It means, number one, the basis of an edifice, that part of a building which lies on the ground, usually a wall of stone, which supports the edifice. Number two is the act of fixing the basis. Okay, number three is the basis or groundwork of anything, that on which anything stands and by which it's supported. Okay, so there are many examples. And then, of course, from the dictionary, it says the lowest load-bearing part of a building, typically below ground level, and then an underlying basis or the principle on which something is built. So today, we will be investigating this. Like I already mentioned, I'll be joined first by my wife and then by our special guests. Hopefully, maybe they'll be joining about the same time. I don't know, but I'm expecting them anytime soon. And as they join, we'll be spending time to ask questions from our special guests to find out exactly how her own home has been built. I've been married for 20 years this November. I've worked with lots of couples. My wife and I, we've worked lots and lots of people around the world. We've seen marriages that have succeeded, marriages that have succeeded. We've seen marriages that haven't gone the distance, marriages that haven't worked out. And one of the reasons why we have focused on this subject today is that foundations, it's always a part of marriage. There can be no successful marriage that is not built on the right foundation. And there can be no successful marriages that are not built on the right foundations. So foundations is a big deal. Just as it's important to a building, so it's important to human relationships. And one of the questions we'll be asking that is based on the definition of foundation, that what would you consider to be the foundation of a building? What do we consider to be the foundation of a building based on the definition of foundation? So we'd like to apply that, but I don't want to run too fast because I know that our guests are joining us. But one of the points I'd like to make is that the foundation of a marriage forms the basis of that marriage, forms the support system of that marriage, forms the principles of that marriage, and gives us a strong inclination if that marriage is going to go the distance. Because it's the lowest bearing part of a building, it's also that part of the marriage that even though you see couples outside relating with one another, that is that part of the formation of their relationship that you cannot see, that has such an important lasting impact. Whether the marriage succeeds, doesn't succeed, is dependent on these things that are not so visible to the naked eye or to the natural eyes. So that's one of the things we know about foundations. And then when we start to apply that to marriage, we have to say to ourselves, so what is it? What then makes up the foundation of a marriage? What makes up the foundation of a successful marriage? How does God view marriages? How will a person, if you're single and waiting and preparing, if you're single and praying, what are the things you'll be doing to be able to make sure that eventually when you get married, that your marriage will go to distance. Why this is also important is because many times people wait for long. Many people go through an elaborate process to get married. They go through the wedding ceremonies and all the things that come with it. And eventually the marriage doesn't last. And you say, wow, what happened? So we're going to be considering some of those factors. What is it? What must you be doing? What can you be doing with your time? What are those important principles? What are those important precepts that form that strong basis of Christian marriages or any type of marriage at all? So there are a number of things that we'll consider that make up the foundations. But before I do that, let me emphasize again that we've agreed that because of its definition, by the very nature of foundations, the word foundation comes from a Latin word. It has a Latin origin. From this very nature, very foundation, we know that let me make sure. Let's see. They said, let me make sure that people are not waiting. Our guests are not waiting. I can't see anybody waiting here. Nobody is waiting. I just want to make sure that nobody is waiting here. Will you just give me a moment here to make sure nobody is waiting? Let me make sure. Let's see. I have to make sure that our guests have been properly invited, that they're not struggling, because I have some notes here. Let me see. Just give me a moment to make sure that people, okay, I've sent this back. Thank you very much. I hope that it helps. I hope that it helps our guests, because I am expecting Pastor Ngozi and our special guest today. Just make sure that okay, thank you very much. So let me go back to the very different shades of meaning for foundations and the way we apply them to marriages. I've said that the word foundation is from a Latin word, so it's a transliterated word, because the word in English and the word in Latin are almost similar in nature and spelling. So what is it therefore, or what are the things that we consider that make up the foundation of a marriage? There are about 4 or 5 things we have here today, and I will be going through them one after the other. There are about 4 or 5 things that we have here. I'll go through them one after the other. The first thing we have, the first thing is your background, the background and the family a person is coming from, how a person grew up, what a person saw growing up. Those things help define relationships for each and every one of us, and that becomes what you come to believe about relationships. So that's the first point, and I will be sure to go through that again. So the first point is a person's background, how you grew up, with the kind of marriage your parents had. Those things define relationships for you, how your parents lived with each other. And we'll try and unpack that further, give some examples to that. So that's the first shade of meaning, what forms of the foundation of a marriage. The next thing, of course, is how a couple getting married, how they met, and how that relationship started and evolved. How has the relationship evolved, and what has formed the basis of that relationship? So how people meet is an important part of their foundation. How people meet. What was the beginning of that relationship? How has the relationship evolved over time? So that's an important part of that definition. Of course, the other thing to have in mind, the next point, it's your belief system and the values that drive your life. Your belief system and the values that drive your life. What you personally believe and choose to believe about marriage it's a part of you that is not seen, but each of us, that what we believe, that's why the Bible talks about guarding your heart. What you believe, and your belief system is formed in your heart. It comes from the words you hear, the things you're looking at, and the forces that are shaping your life, they impact your life. They become information stored in your heart. They become your belief system, and your belief system determines the boundaries of your life, or they determine what you might call the course of your life, and they form a very strong foundation for your marriage. So what you believe, what do you believe about marriage? What do you accept to be the definition of marriage? What do you believe specifically about marriage? That's part of the foundation of your marriage. We believe a lot of things. Some people believe that, marriage is meant to be husband and wife living together until death do them part. And because they believe that it helps them. Some people believe that, well, it didn't work out for my parents, and they didn't really live happily together. Thereafter, they separated, they divorced, and therefore, the likelihood that they are going to bail out of a relationship when things stop going well is very, very high, because it becomes the foundation of their life, And so those are some of the things we look at. And then I'll look at one more. The other one is the kind of marriage you desire and dream about. The kind of marriage you desire and dream about. When you think about marriage, there are things that have shaped you. So it's either not just your background now, what you've seen over the years, the way you have perceived marriage, because your perception is your reality. This is related to your belief system. But each of us, apart from what we believe, our belief system, can choose to dream dreams of what we aspire to, what we desire. What the picture, the mental picture a person has becomes a part of the foundation of your marriage. Because even though that mental picture is not visible to the naked eye, it forms a very strong part of the person's foundation, the foundation of their marriage. Okay, so those are the different shades of meaning. I've given you 4 of them, and I'll be sure. Let me check on our guests to find out how they're doing. Let me check on them. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much. So the thing to have in mind is that because this is the part of the marriage relationship that is not seen by all, and yet it's so important. It's so important to the what you might call the long-term impact, or what you might call the survival of the marriage. And that's one area. By the way, this is one area where work can be done even before you meet a spouse. This is one of the best ways a person can spend their life and their time, what they are doing with their time when they're single, even when you're married. By the way, the advantage of the foundation of a marriage over building foundations, that even though it's a very tedious process, sometimes almost near impossible process to rebuild the foundation of an edifice or structure, even though in many parts of the world they've been able to do it, demolish a property, dig into the foundation, rebuild the foundation, and then rebuild the entire edifice or structure. One of the things that is an advantage is that a person that has the will and is willing to go through the process and pay the price can actually rebuild the foundation of their marriage. You can build it because of the nature, because it's formed on the basis of your belief system, your value system, the dreams you have, the background you're coming from, the kind of marriage you've grown up in, the way your father and mother married, the way your parents were married, the examples that have been shown to you, and the way you have internalized those examples, have accepted them, received them, because those things form the basis of your marriage. It means that anybody can actually work on those foundations and change them, because those things can be shaped or reshaped. Okay, so I hope that you have that in mind. And the other thing also is to remember that as we go along, that the one of the primary reasons, I've mentioned this before, but I want to emphasize it. One of the primary reasons why many marriages actually do not last is because of faulty foundation. Faulty foundation means that either the belief system is wrong, the mental picture is wrong, the examples people have grown up with is not the best example. They've grown up with parents that were fighting, quarreling, parents that lived apart, parents that were emotionally divorced and separated, even though they might have been physically living under the same roof. They lived up with examples of abuse and violence. They lived up with examples of faulty marriage in its general sense. When that happens, you have to work extra hard to make sure that does not become your own experience, because those things affect you. They go into you, they form your belief system, they are stored in the inner recesses of your being, in your heart, and they will influence the choices that you make. They will influence the choices that you make. You can get into a marriage situation where the way you view the marriage, the way you think about the marriage, the way you think about your spouse, you think about them in a certain way, okay? That way you think about them is part of your belief system. You know, even the way you think about yourself. As a man, you can think about yourself as an oppressor of your wife, or somebody that is meant just to give instruction, and your instruction should be followed by your wife, for example. I mean, that's a belief system. It affects you, okay? So those are the things that we must consider. And then we've mentioned the fact that because of his very nature, that those things can be adjusted. You know, I'm not sure how far we want to go with those adjustments and those other things today. But what I would like us to do is to see that when our guests come, whether we can have some kind of sharing experience from their own personal experience as I wait for their arrival. Let me also consider what's going on with them, what's happening, why, you know, they have not been able to join. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much for your patience. I am waiting. I see that I'm the only participant that is here. Thank you for waiting patiently. Let me see if there's anything I can do to help. He says, yeah. Okay. Okay, let me see. Just a moment. Thank you for your kindness, your patience. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Just a moment. Thank you for your patience. I'm trying to make sure that I can get them in. I don't know what challenges they might be facing, where they might be. Let me see. Let me see. Okay. I'm sending the information. I've sent it by email. I don't know what else one can do because our time is fast spent, but I'm hoping that we can get this concluding part of the episode. So if you will just be patient. Okay, so I'm glad you're here. Let me share one of these testimonies. Is that one of the counselors we work with his spouse, who have been involved in the marriage ministry for many years. I remember the first time, maybe it's not the first time, but we invited him once for a marriage session, and he was talking about growing up in what he said was a polygamous home, and the wife, grew up in a home that was, exactly the opposite. Where the wife, the mother was married by the father. There was nobody, no other party to the marriage, and it was a monogamous home. And then when they got married, he said he was sharing this testimony, or this experience. He said that because of the nature of the marriage, that he was squaring for a fight, getting ready for a fight, and all that. And the wife was saying, "But my husband, what's the problem?" And he didn't take him time to realize that the reason was because of where he was coming from, the kind of foundation that he grew up with, and then he said that once he made the adjustment, thank you, Mrs. Duke is joining. We're going to welcome her soon. Thank you, Mrs. Duke. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Mrs. Duke. Yes, your Mrs. Duke, your camera is off. So wait, I'm sure you put it on in a moment. Let me see Pastor Ngozi. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm also trying to get Pastor Ngozi online. She's also trying to join. I hope she's able to do that. Yes. it's been one of those days where things are working that way and that way. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope
Thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
we're happy to have
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just,
we're happy to have you indeed. Let me just make sure that this is okay. I'll try and do a quick summary of where we are and see what else we can do. Thank you. I'll try to see what else we can do. Thank you very much. I think
yeah,
I'll try and give a quick summary.
The network has
get
got
my
a
attention.
major
Yes.
issue.
Yeah,
I've been trying to get a connection.
Oh, really? So what was going on? I don't know. I'm sorry about that. And for those who are watching on Facebook, I'm so sorry for all that is going on. I don't understand what the information they're sending to me. Can you explain this, please?
Is it a network?
I don't know precisely, but we will see. I know that I've tried to get Pastor Ngozi here. She's having connection issues, so I don't know. But I'll bring you up to date because we need to move on and see. Today, last week when you were here, we talked about preparing for marriage. And of course, you shared your testimony, which I'm going to come to in a moment. But the other thing also is that this month of September, we're dealing with foundations. And I will try to go through the definition of foundation, what it means. And we have a few questions for you. They are very simple questions. We want you to be yourself as always, because, the audience would like to benefit from your own personal experience, But before I do that, let me make sure that I have done what I can do from my own end, and that those of us who are watching by Facebook and online, that you are doing well. Okay, so let me go forward here. I think that we by definition, we've defined foundations as the foundation from a dictionary perspective is the lowest load-bearing part of a building, typically below ground level, is the underlying basis of something. The underlying basis of something. The foundation of buildings are usually not visible to the eye because they're below ground level. And yet, is the foundation of a building that carries the load of the building to the ground, that makes the building not collapse. Many times when buildings collapse, it's not the only reason, but one of the reasons is faulty foundations, when the foundation is not appropriate. Those people that live in different parts of the world, maybe live in a place like Victoria Island, Lagos, you find that there are a lot of high-rise buildings, and yet it's an island. An island means that the ground is marshy, and yet they're building skyscrapers in them because they build them on power foundations, strong foundations that go deep until they find the rock surface. And of course, we also know that there are many bridges. They have the Golden Gate Bridge and many bridges, London Bridge, many bridges around the world. We even have we have the Third Mainland Bridge in Nigeria. And we have all kinds of bridges around the world. Some bridges are very famous. All these bridges, most of the time, they're built across water. And yet you wonder, how do you build a bridge across water that carries all this vehicular movement and all that? Well, it's because of the foundation. Many times they have a way that transfers the load from the bridge to the rock surface and so on and so forth. So the question we have for ourselves is that if foundations form such an important part of a building system, what is it that make up the foundation of a marriage? And how can a person build a godly foundation that can make their marriage go the distance? Okay, so we decided to say, what are the things that form the foundation of a marriage? I've gone through 4 things. The first thing I talked about is the examples a person grew by. What kind of marriage did your parents have? What is your image of your parents' marriage? When you think about your daddy, your father, your mother, the kind of marriage you grew up under is the first thing that is not visible to people, but is shaping the way you view marriage. The second thing is how you and your potential spouse meet and how your relationship evolves, how it starts. If the relationship starts with not discussing serious issues and dealing with serious issues, if it just, if it starts in a way that I want to be careful with my language. If Okay, let me give you a classic example. There are relationships that just start with romance. Okay, so it's because of that, it becomes difficult throughout that relationship to sit down and talk about serious issues, because it just starts with not talking about serious issues. But there are relationships that start, that evolve, go through a process. The process could be from being a friend, meeting somebody, they become an acquaintance, they become a friend, maybe even a casual friend and a real friend. And then you start thinking, this friendship is not going beyond friendship. It looks like I'm getting involved with this person's life, and so on and so forth. Because of that process, it forms the foundation. The third foundation, we said, is a person's individual belief system. What you believe, and I'll go through this again, what you believe as a person, what's the difference between that and the first two? It's like growing up as a young person, you can start to dream. The kind of person you want to marry, and the kind of children you like to have, and the kind of family you want to build. That becomes a part of your foundation, because even though that dream and mental picture is not visible to other people, it shapes your life. Because without knowing it, when you meet somebody, you're saying, is that the kind of person I want to marry? You're interrogating yourself, because it's become a part of your foundation. And of course, the final thing we said will be, let me look at that final point. It's the final point. It's okay, I think I've covered 4 of them. I have covered 4 of them. I've said 4 things. The first one is your parents' marriage. Second one is how you meet your potential spouse. Third one is your belief system, your personal belief system. And the fourth one is the dream. Because when I say your belief system means what you believe, your dream about your future marriage is related to your belief system, but it's slightly different from that also. So those are 4, and there could be many more. This list is not exhaustive, right? But we have some specific questions for you. So I will take a moment and see whether Pastor Ngozi is still struggling. She's able to join, not join. I've tried my best, and I don't know what the issue could be today, but it's one of those interesting days. So let me see if there's anything I can do again, because I don't see any. I don't know whether she's still trying to be a part of this or not. Before you start to answer those questions, because we have, based on these things, we have a few questions for you, even if you don't go through all of them. But she was going to be posing some of those questions, but I don't know. Let me try one more time. To send this. Let me try. Okay. Let me try one more time. This should work now. I believe this should work now. Okay. Okay, I have sent it by email. I've sent the link to her by email, and I hope that she's able to join. Let me go to those questions and see. It's so the first question, I will try and paste it, and I can read it to you. I'm going to keep it simple. I will send it like a chat, and I'll read it out to you. The first question, and then I'm sure that when she's able to join, maybe she can help us. But I've sent her an email. So we're saying, considering your background and the family we are raised in and where you're coming from, you talked a bit about your father's background last week, how he eventually went to school, acquired several degrees without starting with formal education, but just his passion for education, his hunger, and why, because of the way God helped him, he was so grateful throughout his life that it affected the way he related with people, because he was just so humbled by life and so grateful to God about life. So we're saying, considering your background, what is it? How did it influence your own marriage? Your own view of your marriage, thinking about your family. In fact, I even forgot, you said doors were not locked, rooms were not locked. This is how you grew up, with liberty, freedom, a father that probably doted on his children, a happy home, and so on and so forth. And the question is that how did that affect you, considering the fact that you've been married for yes.
Hi. How are you?
Yes.
Yes. in terms of, I knew without a doubt, of course, my relationship with God isn't as it is now, but based on, I'm good. I'm very glad to be here again this evening. But like you said, what you see, growing up with your parents, shape your expectation of marriage. And without doubt, I knew that one key, thing I was looking for the man I was going to marry was someone who was very relaxed, someone who was happy, and someone who would easily, associate with people, and someone who was approachable, not someone who, people find difficult. I mean, some fathers are here when they're coming home, the kids, scatter, they go and hide. So I knew that, I would want to marry somebody, with whom I'll be free, and someone who was very, very relaxed with life. And so I know to that extent, that was the image I was looking forward to. So if I had met anybody who was far from that, who was too, maybe too, I mean, and it's different from being assertive. It's different from being strict. That's being open with children, particularly. And so I always had an eye with the people who love children. Also, I wanted to marry somebody who, loved children. I work with children. I love children, and people wonder how come I'm that close and attached to children. But that's all the life I know. So to a large extent, surely the parents you grew up with affect you. And that's from my father's perspective. And my mother was very, very industrious and extremely hardworking. I believe also that I looked forward to becoming that kind of a wife to my husband, because my mother, nobody ever washed my father's shirts, for instance. And back then they'd wash the shirt, they'd use the starch, the thick one, and then put on the collar to make it firm, and on the cuffs and all of that. My mother washed his clothes all through. I knew my mother to be married to her husband. She always washed his clothes herself. I'm not saying men should expect us to wash their clothes today, but to say, she served her husband gladly, and was very happy to do that. And so I looked forward to doing the same also, for my husband.
Yes. We lost your volume. Okay.
Oh, you did? Oh, hello?
But we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm not sure where you lost me.
Mm-hmm.
When did you stop hearing me?
I know that at some point that when you said, well, it was after you said men should not expect their wives to wash their clothes.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yes, but I think.
Yeah, I said, it's not it's washing machine these days. But just to say that because I saw my mom, but because I saw my mom actually washing my father's, clothes and starching them, and, making sure that they were, he was personally taken care of by her. I looked forward to doing it also. And so sometimes when I do stuff for my husband, or I'm serving, people like, why are you doing as if you are a nanny or something? I say, but I'm enjoying it. So it's not a chore for me. And that's because I saw my mother doing it, But then my father always appreciated her also. And that would be different if, the husband does not appreciate what the wife is doing, or he takes her for granted. The balance will be different.
Okay. Fun. No problems. Yeah. Okay. Are you there?
Ngozi, has she come in?
Yeah. Well, she's now sitting by my side. Technology didn't work out for her to log in, which is good. So, so we can.
Okay, so you try to do it this way. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here now.
Okay, so what then? That was the first question. I know that we're definitely going to run out of time, but maybe the way to put it to you would be to say that, considering your background, the kind of marriage your parents had, and the way it impacted you, you've shared experiences of how considered impact. How have you raise your own children. I know you have two, I know you have at least two grown daughters who are married today.
Yes.
I know that the challenge about marriage is that when we show the examples, even as my wife and I were dialoguing, we say when we talk about marriages, we're not projecting any marriage to say there are perfect marriages out there, but we're saying that that if somebody's been married as long as you've been, 34 years this November, over 3 decades, you must know something. There must be lessons along the way that you must have passed on to your daughters. You're trying to pass on to the young women around you. Whether they receive it, they don't receive it, it's a different ballgame, but some things have shaped your life. What are the things that have shaped your marriage in terms of just the experience you've had and what you want to pass on to people who are listening and who are preparing for marriage? They don't have, maybe they're not even in a relationship today, but they desire to marry and to marry well.
Well, I think the first most important, thing for me, asking that they learn quickly to discern,
Okay.
because it's something that requires to practice, to deliberately and consciously, as you take your marriage to the Lord, or you pray to God concerning marriage, that you also learn to to hear what the Lord is speaking to you about. I mean, it would seem like it's being Christianese or being too spiritual, but the fact is that the people in the world also, they call intuition. They say they can perceive and all of that. So every child of God should deliberately try and also practice to listen to their inner, to their spirit man to lead them. Now, past that is the fact that we should remember that each individual is different, and we are all very different people. And so patience is required in understanding another person. So what key thing I would say is that for young people who are married, that you are two different individuals. You have to be patient and give yourself time to understand themselves. And it takes one person to decide that the marriage will succeed. The two of them better, but if one person decides that the marriage will succeed, the chances are very high that it will succeed, because it means that person will be willing to go the extra mile, will be willing to overlook, and will be willing to to continue to make provision for the other person lapses. And I still truly believe that with time, the other person, whether it's a man or the woman who is at the given end, who seems to be giving more, will one day realize that the other person have also come around to it. So patience, is key. Being able to wait through a season. There are times, one time the husband will be more, appear to be loving the wife more, and other times the wife will appear to love him more. But it's seasons, even in the marriage or in the relationship, and to know that each season will come and pass. That is one. And the other, I say to my daughters, and I'll say to any of the young ones, is that you must just learn to forgive, and with patience, forgiving also steps in, because if you do not, then you find that the issues will build up. And what is a small issue today, if you overlook it or if you forgive it and move on, then it is past, it is gone. Tomorrow is a clean slate. But if one person offends the other and they decide to hold on to it and remember it, then you find that, it will be a mountain, and in 5 years' time, the hurt will be so much that it becomes difficult to dilute it or to ease it off. So the second point, apart from being patient and deciding that whether my husband likes it or not, or my wife likes it or not, this marriage will succeed. And not only will it succeed, I'll be happy in it. So I don't believe that marriages should be endured to say, I've entered, I must. No, it's not to be enjoyed, but to be enjoyed. And that function is upon you to enjoy the marriage. And so, irrespective of what you might be going through, it's the lens with which you see it. If you decide to see that it's just a phase, your husband or your the wife may be behaving naughty or whatever. But if you say to yourself that it's a phase the person is going through, and quite frankly, you are not sure, it's possible that they are actually going through a phase. They may be going through some challenges. Now, each person is different. Some people are able to talk about the challenges they are going to their spouse, which is good. And like Pastor John, you said, when they have a relationship, when during courtship, they have grown from, being acquaintances and all of that, then they speak, they share more easily. But if they didn't have that relationship, and even when they do, some people still find it difficult sometimes to talk. A man can go to work, his boss has been nasty to him. He probably does not want to tell his wife that my boss told me I'm stupid today at work, but he may be in a bad mood. Now, she says, hi, how are you? And he ignores her. She can get offended, So, once we have in mind that even when he acts badly towards you, it might be because of, another issue, and you might not just be the problem. And in the process of doing that, I think you will not be that miserable over things that you don't need to be miserable about, and the relationship will grow, on the foundation like you are speaking about, on trust and love.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me see how we're doing. Thank you. Okay, so Pastor Ngozi, we had all the glitches and trying to start the session. What would you say? Do you want to pose another question, make a contribution, and give a commentary as we, begin to wind down? We'll try to see whether we can get 3 extra minutes from this session today because of the challenges we faced. Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Ma. We appreciate you and all the words of wisdom. My prayer is that as it's coming out, that it's entering, people's hearts and that they appreciate it, because, when you're young, everything kind of blows like from one ear to the other, and you feel like, let me just get this relationship first, and other things will come. But this is so important. I believe that if our singles can hear this now and take it to heart, even now that the life is moving so fast, that it will make a huge difference. So thank you so much again for all the words of wisdom you're sharing with us, and it will not return empty. It will accomplish God's purpose in Jesus' name.
Amen.
So I have a lot of friends, who are, like older. I'll see maybe mature singles who are over 40, or who are, who just feel, oh my God, my time has passed and all that. I know that from the last session, you mentioned how you really met your husband early and you were able to make this decision. Do you think there's anything, because sometimes we might be blaming ourselves. Do you think that, what are your angles or your views on, when someone is really getting much older, over 40, or consider themselves as a mature single person, do you have any word for them? Is there anything that can prevent that from happening, or is there any way to manage that situation? What do you think?
Well, I particularly, but not because I'm turning 60, but I always, believe that age, strongly is a function of, how you feel. You won't take away from your biological age, but how you relate to people and how, you respond to situation is you. And so for someone who gets older and mature like I do, I would want to see myself as I have the advantage of experience of years, but that does not stop me from being able to relate. So I should be a better person than when I was younger, because I have the best of the two worlds. And so also it is for, I believe, the matured single as we speak, And so if a woman have attained a particular age and she thinks, she's probably gone past the age. There is no age has gone past. And I believe that if she, keeps her mannerisms, her behavior, well, and trust God, it's never too late. I've had, friends who've married at 50, I've had friends who married at 45, and it's not, there's never a time when any girl or any lady should feel it's too late for me to get married. Just keep your heart young. And one snag that might happen is that because of their age, habits are easy to form. And because they have been on their own and been independent and taking care of themselves, you can go out when you want to, come back when you want to. It is possible that even when you get into a relationship, you may be so fixed in your ways that without knowing, I have a few, mature friends. I said, look, this thing you are doing, it's not right, step it down. You know what I mean? So it's possible for them to forget themselves. And so when a guy comes closer to them, right, they are not able to always remember that, this is a guy, I'm supposed to be under him. He's going to be my head, right? And sometimes they overdo it as it appears like they're being pretentious. Other times they're themselves and they're truly themselves. So I would say is to try and strike a balance when you meet a guy that can possibly become, your spouse. Respect him. Don't, invariably, you are probably doing well in your profession or whatever, but put that aside and let him, realize that you will still be the young wife he would want to have. And he can actually have the best, of the two worlds. We know of a president whose wife is, much older. I think he's teacher. So why not? There is never, an age that should stop a woman from feeling, she now no longer can be appealing to, or, not of a marriageable age. I think a lot of work has to come from her and how she relates to the spouse to be, as it were.
Thank you very much. But I probably also think that should also apply to gentlemen who are also growing older, who are not married. But I mean, those are principles. I think that in the overall, because of the theme for the month of September on foundations, that you've mentioned some factors. You mentioned patience. You mentioned the factor of love. The other words you used, what are the other words you used? I know you used patience, being patient, being loving.
Okay.
She said mannerism. I'm talking about when you were talking about we were talking about
taking personal responsibility, more or less.
Yes, and then personal responsibility. You also mentioned forgiving.
Forgiving. Okay.
Forgiving. Yes. So when you look at if you take responsibility, being responsible, taking personal responsibility, think about patience, think about forgiveness or being forgiven. You think about maybe even other things that are implied like trust and love. You see that all these things are values. So it means that each person coming to a marriage has a value system. What is it that is important to you? For example, is it important to you to forgive and be forgiven? Is it important to you to be responsive and be responsible? Is it important to you for you to be patient with the other party, long suffering, and so on and so forth? It means that, and these same things are called fruits of the Spirit in the book of Galatians, and incidentally, without meaning to read the verse, you're calling them one by one, long suffering, which is patience, love, and all that, even responsibilities implied. It then tells us that the quality of a person's life, it's going to have a long way in influencing the nature of the marriage they have, because that quality of your character, the values that you have and the things that you value, or the principles you value, the qualities you value, they are not visible to the natural eye, but because they shape you, they also shape your marriage. Something as simple as forgiveness can break a home. The fact that somebody is refusing to let go and let someone be. The fact that somebody is not patient with another person can also break a home. So I think that this is an important subject. Unfortunately, we don't have as much time as to cover all the things we desired, because of all the glitches and the things that have happened. But for those people that are listening out there, I don't know where you are in life. I don't know whether you're single. I don't know whether you're married. I don't know whether you are a mature single, like my wife would describe them. But I believe that Pastor Onari today has touched on several things, and I'm sure there are many more where that has come from, just to say that homes can be built, marriages are built, and they are built by choices that the picture we are seeing growing up has impact on our lives. He talked about his parents, the marriage of his parents, the fact that the mother was genuinely married to her father, her husband, and did chores like washing his clothes and all that. Of course, in this day of washing machines and where there are alternatives and options, the principle remains the same. The method may be different. In other words, there were things she was doing that she did just as a demonstration of her commitment and love to her husband, and Pastor Onari's father. And Pastor Onari, even today, Onari, today, has also said, oh, there are still chores I do today for my husband. People are like, why are you doing that? And he said, oh, I want to do that. Okay, so it shows that how those things are formed. And then she's also told us about the values she's passing on to her own daughters who are married and to perhaps the young people around her, those values of patience, of being responsible, of what again? Forgiveness, of love. Every marriage is built on the value of love. People have to love each other and many other such things. What I would say before I pause is that from observation, just working with several people, I know that when you interact with couples generally, when the marriage is doing well or the marriage is not doing as well as they desire, the truth is that every time you interrogate or investigate or you ask questions, you find that many times some of the things that could be the issue are the things that are not even said. They are those things that one could be taken for granted. For example, you can have a long discussion and maybe the whole answer is about forgiveness. Why don't you just forgive and let your spouse be? Why don't you just be patient with them? And it looks so simple. But when it's not practiced, the results can be very, very complex and difficult. So every marriage, like every building, must be built on the right foundation. If the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Okay, yes. Do you have any concluding thoughts, Pastor Ngozi?
Well, what I would want to ask is, some of these things, if you meet a couple who are already married and they're having the issues, it becomes easy like to drum it in because they're living in it. But for the single who just wants to meet the person, I just want to meet the guy. Can it happen this year? I need to marry this year. It sometimes is often not as easy to emphasize some of these things, to them. So what would you say, how would you, if there was just one thing you wanted to say to a single person before, right now where, these things don't really drive home, what would you say to, someone who's single? How would you want them to, yeah.
Yeah, one point is, because human beings are tendentious, and before I respond to you, Pastor Ngozi, I want to add that it is easy, even for the married ones, for the husbands to take the wives for granted, and oftentimes, there are cases when, because the woman is serving that much, the husband is not reciprocating, right? And because he's not reciprocating, sometimes she still does it, but grudgingly. She no longer does it from her free will. She no longer does it happily. She's doing it because, well, she had started it. Now, for young couple, I would say they should try and avoid that, because for both of them, whatever kindness that is shown to you, not just in marriage, but, generally speaking, particularly in marriage, it should be reciprocated, and we should not take each other for granted. And that because, for instance, the woman is washing his clothes or doing things for him, does not mean the day she's feeling ill or she's just tired or does not just feel like it, the husband should say, no, still go and do it. Then that will not be fair. So just to encourage the young couple to always ensure that they also put themselves in the other person's shoes and not take each other for granted. Now, coming to your married young ones, I would say that it is again important that not out of desperation you see Pastor John has said, our values. You must know what are your value system, what are you looking for, what are your expectations. So if you sometimes out of desperation, we see something that is a red flag, and they still go for it. So someone might just outright be not a kind person, and you can see it, and you still decide it's better to hold on to this. Fine, if you're that desperate, you can. But then, by prayer and fasting, it may change. But you have to give a longer time for that behavior to change, because that is his core. Maybe, it's not part of what is important to him. So it's crucial that we don't get desperate. The young ones don't get desperate enough to settle for what is below what they had trusted God for. That is one. Now, outside that, when a girl gets to an age and she definitely wants to marry, I think also it is important that not because she's desperate, she would not compromises. The guy that would marry you, he would marry you, and you will not be because I did not, do this, I didn't go this far, that he knows. I have had cases where the girls are worried that if I don't go all the way with him, maybe he will not marry me. He wants to be sure and all of that. My advice is that don't be that desperate. God is your God. Your husband is your husband. And then the third part of, my observation or what I'd suggest for them is that even if you are desperate to get married and you want to get married, still make sure that you remain yourself. Don't, you can change for the good, so there are aspects of you that should be improved. Yes, it's good to improve, and we are all work in progress. You should improve, but not to be pretentious about it, because you pretend in order to get a man hooked. He may see through it and may not also marry you. But when you let him know who you are, rather it's better to say, this is how I am, and let him, learn to either accept you, or you say, look, I'm ready to make the changes and all of that. I think sincerity has its place. And once a man, sees that a woman is sincere and genuine, from her inner part, it gives her, it puts her in a good state. I don't believe any man wants to marry a woman he cannot trust. And, building trust is very, very critical in the relationship towards marriage.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know that there's no way to come to the end. There's so much to be shared. I don't know what questions we might have out there. We requested that people send in your comments, questions. If we have any and we can attend to them, we will do the very best that we can. But we are so happy that we are able to have this today and that we have you on board. And I'm sure that you please, thank you so much also for coming.
Sorry, I came in late again, because of the other program.
Well, today...
when I tried to get in, the network was just acting up great badly. I joined in definitely at least 15 minutes before I did.
Wow. Well, Pastor God had a similar problem, but that's it. We thank God for today's session. We will have to find a way to bring it to a closure. I don't know if you on your part, before we pray, do you have any closing thoughts? Pastor Onari, do you have any closing thoughts? One more thing you like to say. I know that Pastor God has come at it from many angles, a word for the mature singles, a word for those single praying and waiting, and so on and so forth. Do you have anything you think you would really like to leave with people out there that will help them? Especially those, I believe it applies to all, but those people who are really, really waiting and desirous of settling down, as we like to use the language. People, everybody, it's in a different situation. Everybody's situation is unique. Let me pause.
Well, one thing I always do is to act out what I believe and what I'm expecting. Mm-hmm. And so, we have said, all the key things we should practice and how we should act and all that. Mm-hmm. I would say that we should go ahead and begin to exercise our faith and, prepare our homes and prepare our hearts as if we have a husband. and surely it will happen. I mean, it's akin to, a lady trusting God for fruit of the womb, and, going ahead to buy her baby's clothes and setting up the baby's room. I've had several testimonies of that, coming to it. So begin to practice how you will, enjoy your husband, and how you, just enjoy your home and your children, and trust God that it will happen. Because going through this series with you and, Pastor Ngozi, I know that all of the advice and the words of, wisdom and encouragement have been given. So what therefore is left is for each to continue to trust God and be clear in her mind what her expectations are, and not to despise any man, because I've also seen that God, he truly uses foolishness to confound the wise. So sometimes you might be expecting a particular kind of man, and a particular, man of a particular status and all of that. At least, for one, when I married my husband, he didn't have a house, he didn't have a job, he didn't have anything, he didn't have a car. So, but sometimes even, sometimes, especially for the matured single, also they may say, this is where I am, so I can't marry anyone below that. And even for the young ones these days, we have quite a number of young ones who have set their eyes not on their mates, but on, people who probably already have houses, or someone who already have a car and all of that. That's the kind of husband they want. And there's nothing wrong with it. But if you are too fixed on it, when the one that God have blessed you with comes on foot without a car, hopping off Okada, you may say, no, I cannot marry this one. But guess what? In 2 years, that guy, may be driving one of your dream cars, because, that's something that can just easily happen. So again, I round up saying we should listen to what the Spirit of God is saying to us, right? When we meet these men, and not look at them from the superficial and what they look at in the outward, because the inner being is what is important to God. And so we do not miss our husbands or our spouses because you are looking for a particular class and status of man to marry.
Thank you. Pastor Ngozi, any closing thoughts?
It's just so powerful. Awesome words of wisdom, very powerful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Sorry for joining late again.
No, we understand that you're on a mission, and we are in support of that mission.
God. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you so much. For those of us who are watching out there, we're going to be bringing this broadcast to a closure. I think the word I would like to leave with us, building on what Pastor Onari has said, she's given us a lot of words of wisdom, words of advice, is that I want to remind you of both what Jesus implied and what Paul said. Paul said that those that are married should live as if they were not married, and those that are single as if they were married. And the other way around also means that, in other words, that even though marriage is a great thing, we want to marry and be given in marriage, we should remember also, because of the seasons in which we live, that we have to be mindful to make the most of every opportunity that is available to us. Don't pause your life. Don't say, oh, because I'm not in a relationship, because I don't have a partner, because I don't have a husband, because I don't have a wife, I cannot serve God with my life. I cannot make contributions to other people's life. Don't wait. Don't let life pass you by, because even the time that is passing by when we are waiting to be married will not be recovered because we get married. So enjoy every moment and live as if Jesus was coming tomorrow. And the reason is because he gives us the opportunity to make our own contributions in life. And then keep preparing, keep preparing, so that eventually, when that opportunity comes, that you are such a blessing to your partner that they know you've gone through seasons of preparation, and they will always be grateful to God for your life. And so those are my closing thoughts. And I think you can always come back again and again to this broadcast and listen to it, download it, play it, because some of these are timeless words of wisdom. And I know that as we apply them to our lives, that the benefits of obedience will accrue to us. It's been nice sharing with you. We look forward to seeing you again next week by the grace of God. Thank you, Pastor Onari.
Thank you very much, Pastor John. Thank you, Asengazi. Lovely to have you guys again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Not at all. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
And God bless you for what you're doing,
Amen.
All the lives that you are impacting and touching by, all your programs. Yes. And your marriage is such an example, We thank God for it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Bye. Love you, children.
Thank you. Thank you. And God bless you, all our viewers and all the participants. We look forward to see you next week, and we'll be building on this. God bless you and enjoy the rest of your evening wherever you are around the world. Bye for now. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.